Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Pied Piper of Pasadena, Part 18. This is the story of Dean Corll. After police would investigate the house on 2020 Lamar Drive on August 18, 1973, they would take Rhonda Williams, Timothy Curley, and Wayne Henley into the station for more questioning. Rhonda Williams would later say that she is always thankful for Wayne Henley for saving her life. Timothy Curley, however, once he had learned about everything that he had done over the years, he had more mixed emotions about it. In 2009, he would make a statement, "I have no idea what I would do if I would see him right now. Half of me wants to shake his hand and thank him, and the other half just wants to beat the shit out of him." But back in 1973, the police would investigate Wayne Henley about the building up to the murder of Dean Corll. And he would tell in great detail what had happened leading up to the events of him killing him. And once he was done there, Wayne Henley would start talking about this very twisted plot that police were not ready for. And Wayne Henley would even go and tell the police that Dean Corll was a predator. And not only was he a predator, but he had groomed himself and David Brooks and had even paid him $200 to procure teenage boys for him and his dark, twisted fantasies. Police were very skeptical. And it is at that point that Wayne Henley not only started telling stories, but would even tell the police where the bodies were buried. And he would start naming names. And as I said, the police did not believe Wayne Henley until they went back and they had found out that every single person that he had began naming was either missing or labeled a runaway. Which brings us to the beginning of our story, where they started exhuming the boat shed. And by the second day, it was really a spectacle. By day 2 of the exhumption, not only had they got prisoners to exhume these bodies, but they had even got the news station to come down there and start recording things. In the actual news article that aired that day, it can be seen Wayne Henley using a payphone in the squad car calling his mom. And everyone could hear how he was confessing to his mother, "Mom, I killed Dean Corll. He left me no choice." Aside from his mother and various other people, there would be another person that would see this news, and that would be David Brooks. David Brooks would come to the station the next day with his father, and he would make a statement as well. But he would also tell the police that he did not kill any of the victims that they had found, and would confirm Wayne Henley's story that Dean Corll had in fact made him procure adolescent boys. And his story would be that he more or less watched Dean Corll do these things, but he would also make a confession that the person that had been leading them to these bodies, Wayne Henley, had actually committed about 9 of the 29 victims that were killed. From this confession, the police would then charge Henley for 6 of the counts of murder. They would not include the murder of Dean Corll, as in that was in for self-defense. But it could not be the same for the rest of the crimes that he had committed. They would perform a psych evaluation test on Wayne Henley, but he would be shown in that evaluation to have a great deal of psychopathy. And due to the nature of the sadism for his crimes, out of the 6 murders that he had committed, they would charge him 99 years for each murder. And he would try to appeal this multiple times, but they would give him the same sentence every time. Wayne Henley is still in prison to this day. He has spent most of his life in the prison system. His next date for parole is in 2025. And I honestly hope he does not get it. Now, even though David Brooks had never committed a murder during the entire times of procuring teenagers for Dean Corll, he would not go unscathed. In fact, during his trial that was a few years later, he would be tried for the brutal torturing of Billy Lawrence. Because if you remember, when they abducted him, they would all torture him and sodomize him for 3 days. And because of this and the amount of sadism of this crime, they would charge Brooks to 99 years. It is said that when they read out the verdict, David Brooks was completely emotionless. His wife, however, was completely in tears, and keep in mind that he had just had a child on the way. He would spend most of his life not really knowing his daughter, and his daughter would eventually meet him in prison when she was 17 years old. But this meeting would be very short-lived, because unfortunately right after that meeting, his daughter would actually be in a fatal car accident on her way home from prom. David Brooks would eventually catch the COVID-19 virus and succumb to his illness and pass away on May 20th, 2020. David Brooks was 65 years old. A lot of people, when they heard about the verdict, they were very, very puzzled, because Texas, being a state that greatly encourages the death penalty, were completely baffled by the fact that they did not put David Brooks or Wayne Henley on the execution chamber. But because, and this was the judge's ruling, they were minors when they started procuring adolescents, they could not be executed, even though they were fully grown adults when they got caught. And granted, Dean Corll did a lot of heavy amount of grooming on both boys, it still doesn't excuse the fact that what they did to these poor children was unforgivable. When everything came to light about Dean Corll and his many crimes, the one person that really would be vocal about speaking out about it would be his mother, Mary. She just could not believe that her son was responsible for anything. She would always go to the fact of her abusive husband and say, well, if he was such a killer, why didn't he kill him when he had the chance? She just couldn't get through the fact that her son was capable of committing these crimes. She would even go and tell people, I truly believe my son is innocent, and this idea that he was behind everything is ridiculous. And would even go as far to say that she had thought that possibly Wayne Henley and David Brooks were killing these kids, and when her son found out about it, they had killed him so that no one would know, and eventually tried to pin it on him. But unfortunately for an investigation, this would not be the case. If you remember, in our earlier stories, we had talked about how Dean Corll would spend a period of time at his grandmother's in Indiana. And after everything came to light about the crimes, they would investigate the house that Dean Corll stayed at. And on that property, in one of the rooms that Dean Corll had stayed at, they would actually find a femur bone of an adolescent child, which would mean that Dean Corll probably had began killing as early as 19. There's honestly no idea how many people Dean Corll had killed over the years. But because of what they found at his grandmother's residence, and back when we know that Dean Corll was getting rid of defective candy and burying stuff by the Corll Candy Company and by the parking lot that was used, police speculate that his kill count could be as high as 100. And not only his kill count was that high, but serial killer John Wayne Gacy would also say he got his idea of using the handcuff trick by watching the news when they would go over Dean Corll and the Candyman murders. So he actually got this idea from Dean Corll. Out of all the things confiscated from Wayne Henley, police would find this very picture and have recently released it, trying to figure out who this person really is. But considering the stuff that Wayne Henley and Dean Corll and David Brooks did, and the look on this child's face, it literally makes my skin crawl.